Hello and welcome to Hungry Beast. Tonight we peer into the murky dark of secrets and privacy, from the art of intercepting CCTV signals to leaked footage from our soldiers in Afghanistan that's unlike anything you've ever seen before. Plus, the company that profits from your privacy. Last week, the European Union announced its intention to regulate social media sites such as Facebook to give users what they call the right to be forgotten, the right to demand all of your posts and photos be removed. And yet, that's not stopping millions of people from joining Facebook every week. So, is our concept of privacy changing? Elmo Keep surveys the landscape.
Germany, 2010, where debate rages around the privacy implications of Google Street View, the online tool that lets you search suburban streets looking at houses. The German government gives Google the OK on the proviso that people's faces and car licence plates caught by its cameras will be blurred, and that anyone wishing to opt out of Street View will be able to have their house blurred too. 244,000 Germans opt out and choose pixelation. But for some people, that's not enough. In the northern city of Oldenburg, privacy activists sabotage a Google camera car, letting down the tyres and slashing the camera cables. In retaliation in Essen, anti-privacy activists vandalise the homes of people who have their houses blurred, pelting them with eggs and posting signs on their doors reading "Google is cool." So why is this happening? We've all heard the arguments about why privacy is a good thing, but what about the people who think we don't need it anymore? Who are the growing band of people who are in favour of public becoming the new private? Some of them are familiar faces. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg berates anyone seeking anonymity online and once said,
"Privacy as a social norm is no longer relevant."
Google CEO Eric Schmidt is another who believes privacy is a relic of the pre-digital era.
If you have something that you don't want anyone to know, maybe you shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
Of course, both those men would say that. Facebook and Google are in the business of data harvesting, so the more of yourself you share online, the more accurately they can track you and so target you with advertising. But they're not alone in wanting public to replace private. In fact, it's easiest if you think of the forces at work here as a triangle. In one corner, you have big business. And in another, you have government, which has more access to more information about us than ever before. Domestic security and surveillance have increased across the Western world since 9/11. Late last year, our own Attorney General proposed a mandatory data retention scheme, which would force ISPs to keep records of all our online communications, just in case it should ever be needed by law enforcement. Like it just was in America, where a magistrate has ruled that Twitter has to give up its users' data as part of the government's probe into WikiLeaks. So governments also want public rather than private because they want to know all of our secrets, even if they're not too keen on having their own spilled. Particularly not by WikiLeaks, whose founder Julian Assange believes in radical transparency, a view that a world without corporate, military or government secrets would be a better place for all of us by leading to a more accountable kind of democracy. The last point in the new privacy triangle is you, me, us, the regular everyday users of social media who willingly exchange chunks of our privacy in return for these free services. Facebook, Twitter, Gmail, to name just a few. Every week, 23 exabytes of information are added to the web. The majority of that content comes from ordinary people living their lives online. On Twitter, more than 50 million tweets are written every day. On YouTube, 24 hours of video is uploaded every minute. On Facebook, more than 200 million photos are added each day, along with 114 million posts and 720 million comments.
This publicness that we start to live will make us a more tolerant society.
Increasingly, digital commentators like Jeff Jarvis argue that the desire for privacy retards our social and economic growth. Apparently, we're not just wading through a narcissism epidemic, but a more profound transition is underway.
And the internet is an incredible machine to connect people with each other and with information and action. And if you cut yourself off and put yourself in a wall and pixelate your life, you're not going to connect with other people, and that's a loss.
One thing is certain, the more privacy we concede, the more we will be asked to concede. In the US, right now, employers are demanding Facebook logins and password details from prospective employees. And as Google's Eric Schmidt said last year, changing your name to escape your wild online youth could become a standard rite of passage into adulthood. A brand spanking new identity may well become this century's 21st birthday present. And if you're worried about how you might fund that gift, well, the future could lie in monetising your privacy, in taking your data back from the companies which hold it and then selling it straight on to advertisers. Already there's a bunch of hopeful startups who will broker a deal on your browser history for you. After all, if this public is the new private trend continues, you're likely to give it all up anyway. So why not get paid for it?
Australians are some of the most active social media users in the world. But what does web privacy mean to us? Well, to find out, we asked McNair Ingenuity Research to survey the 80% of us that use the internet. The country is wired. 82% of web-connected Australians use social networks. 93% of those are on Facebook. Victorians and Tasmanians are the most socially networked. 84% are now sharing themselves. Queenslanders do it the least. The most active are 18 to 29-year-olds. The least active are those over 55. But senior citizens are going social. So how much do we care about privacy online? Well, 77% of social networkers have adjusted their privacy settings, even though barely a third have read the privacy policies of the sites they use. 85% of people under 40 customise their settings. People over 55 are the least likely group to have done so. Of those who do control their privacy, only a tiny fraction set it to share with everyone. Almost 4 in 5 share only with their friends. When it comes to third parties accessing our information, we're pretty split. Just under half of people using social networks are concerned about employers having access to their online postings. A similar percentage are bothered by the idea of law enforcement agencies requesting their information from web companies. Just over half are worried that government departments could access their info, and close to 3/4 aren't happy about advertisers and private companies tracking their online lives. Overall, for every person who wants to be private, there's someone who wants to share it all. You can see the full results of the Internet Privacy Survey on the Hungry Beast website.
Now, we can do this the hard way or the easy way.
Oh, you're right about that.
I can keep you here all day.
But you won't, if you know what's good for you.
Start talking.
I have. Now it's my turn for answers.
Well, what?
Well, you'll be seeing me from behind bars.
Too right, I'll be seeing you from in front of bars.
Behind?
Technically, it's in front.
It's behind. Who do you think you are?
I'm Detective Senior Sergeant Smith, and I am your worst nightmare.
Smitty? Jono! Sorry, mate. Gee whiz.
Can we get some lights on in here?
Send in the accused.
So what'd this guy do anyway?
Killed your wife.
Stuff said. Secrets.
We are rapidly entering an age of no privacy, where everyone is open to surveillance at all times, where there are no secrets from government. US Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas, commenting on the eligibility of a tape-recorded conversation as evidence in Osborne versus the United States in 1966.
Hello, all you cyberheads. Welcome to the 90s version of intimacy. You can hear me, you can even see me, but you can't touch me.
Madonna, in an online message to fans promoting her new single Secret in 1994.
Civilization is the progress toward a society of privacy. The savage's whole existence is public, ruled by the laws of his tribe. Civilization is the process of setting man free from men. Ayn Rand, author and philosopher, in her best-selling novel The Fountainhead, published in 1943.
Afghanistan. We've been there for 10 years now, and it looks like we could be for many more. But are we really getting the full picture of what it's like for our soldiers on the ground?
On October 18, 2010, Australian Special Forces in Afghanistan conducted one of their most successful operations against the Taliban to date. Acting on intelligence that a number of high-ranking leaders would be in northern Kandahar, they raided a series of compounds in the Shah Walikot region. Under heavy machine gun and small arms fire, members of the 2nd Commando Regiment, along with their Afghan National Police counterparts, cleared several buildings, evacuating more than 36 women and children.
Assist!
At least 10 insurgents were killed in the operation, including high and mid-level Taliban figures.
We've got one pinned in this fucking room. Go in outside!
Several others were captured, along with a large number of weapons. There were no civilian casualties.
Back! Move, move, move! Go! No, that wasn't it. That was.
This is a good news story, not the sort of thing you'd expect a government to sit on. But it took a full week for the Department of Defence to release any information about it. And when it did, this is what it chose to tell us.
There have been more Australian casualties in Afghanistan, with 4 Special Forces soldiers wounded.
With no other information to go on, that's what became the news story of the day. Defence claimed the release of information had been delayed due to ongoing operations and security, and it took a further 2 weeks to publish anything relating to the actual results of the operation, even though ISAF, the NATO-led umbrella body of coalition forces in Afghanistan, had already published them within 24 hours of the raid. This footage was cleared by commanders on the ground and the ADF's headquarters in the Middle East and sent to Canberra for release through Defence Public Affairs. It was never made public.
Get out of the way!
Just one example of what is being increasingly described as a culture of secrecy in Defence Minister Stephen Smith's office.
The Defence Force and the government have endeavoured to be as transparent as we can about our engagement in Afghanistan.
For the last 10 years, the Department of Defence has really tried to control every bit of information that comes out of the department and out of the Defence Force. And in some cases, they've been pretty successful.
James Brown, who served in Afghanistan, says this is not an isolated instance.
There's been a few examples recently where good work that's been done on the ground just hasn't been announced back in Australia. And a few of the guys are starting to ask why that is the case. You know, why the hard work that they're doing isn't being appreciated back in Australia, and why Australians don't get a chance to appreciate just how complex and tough some of these missions they're doing are.
One currently serving Australian soldier echoes this sentiment.
You've got men out there putting their lives on the line, taking enormous risks, and very little of the positive result is ever released to the public. Yet whenever something bad happens, somebody gets injured, somebody gets killed, or whenever there's any suggestion of misconduct by Australian troops, then it will immediately get to the media.
Lieutenant General Peter Leahy was Chief of Army for 6 years.
The information comes out of the field. It's cleared by the commander in location. It then goes further back and it's cleared through the chain of command by successively higher headquarters. And then I see a bit of a black hole appear, where other allied nations seem to be able to release their information and their footage pretty quickly. If ours comes out, it seems to come out some weeks later. And clearly the story's gone by then.
Most Australians, the view they have of what soldiers are doing in Afghanistan is shaped around someone saying shit happens, rather than, OK, here's how tough the work they're doing is and here's how difficult the kind of missions they're performing are.
Yeah.
It shows you just how hard, dirty and dangerous these sorts of operations are. And again, this is the sort of information that I think the Australian public needs to know. If I was one of these blokes, I'd say, I've done my job. You sent me here to do it. Why don't you recognise me for what I'm doing?
Can you see any reason why the Minister wouldn't want to release this?
I think there's a concern that the Australian public might not respond well to images of soldiers shooting their weapons, carrying out what look like they are pretty hostile acts. But there's nothing in here that would make me feel bad about the work that they're doing. In fact, watching this footage just makes me appreciate how incredibly skilled these guys are and how incredibly brave the work they do is.